The first general election in the history of Great Britain took place from 30th of April until 7th of July 1708. Now first, some explanation. This series is inspired by YouTuber Mr. Beat's videos on presidential elections in American history. However, the history of British elections compared to American elections isn't quite as clear-cut. It's a fact that the first presidential election in American history took place between 1788 and 1789, and while yes, 1708 was the year the first British general election took place, this was the first general election after the Acts of Union a year prior, which unified the then separate countries of Scotland and England and Wales to one singular nation, the Kingdom of Great Britain. This act consequentially also unified the then separate parliaments. The history of English elections, that is, elections held under the Kingdom of England before the Acts of Union in 1707, is a lot longer, going all the way back to Simon de Montfort's Parliament in 1265, although we will not cover any English or Scottish elections because as you go back, there's few and few information and, to be honest, it's quite boring, and I don't think people will be interested in that. Now the other thing is that in American presidential elections, the winner of that election gets to become president, meaning that they're now the leader of their country. Nowadays, the winners of British general elections become prime ministers, meaning that they're the head of government of their country. However, the term prime minister, meaning head of government, didn't just pop out of nowhere. The term gradually evolved. The commonly accepted consensus by historians is that this guy, Sir Robert Walpole, was the first British prime minister, serving from 1721 until 1742. His official title wasn't Prime Minister, although he was informally called that by the people around him, and he was seen as the undisputed head of the British government. Before then, however, general elections were just simply a battle between the opposing parties, which tended to be the Whigs and Tories, to garner the most seats in Parliament. The sovereign, before the revolutionary settlement, beginning 1688, acted as a head of government and commanded the power of a Parliament, although gradually the sovereign's power weakened over history. We'll touch more with the details of that in upcoming videos. Right, so the year 1708 was not only before the internet, but it was before the telegram, so information didn't arrive as quickly as it does now, meaning that elections didn't take place at the same time in every constituency. In fact, contests weren't held in every British constituency. They were held in 95 of the 269 English and Welsh constituencies and 28 of the 45 Scottish constituencies. Elections were different in the 18th century to now in many other ways too. While the winning party is still determined by if they have the most seats in the House of Commons, nowadays the seats are determined by the public voters over 18 in each constituency, aka representative democracy. Back in the 18th century, only a small portion of the population had the right to vote, usually only rich white male landowners. Or specifically, from 1432 until the 19th century, when they started reforming the parliamentary franchise drastically, the only people who could vote were known as 40 shilling freeholders, basically men who own land for an annual rent of at least 40 shillings or £2, or around £375 of today's money, who, by virtue of this fact, had the right to vote in local and general elections. Let's move on to the election itself. Lord Somers led the Whig Party during this election. Now the Whigs were mainly known for advocating for less power from their sovereign and more parliamentary control. They spoke out against there being an absolute monarchy, and they'd rather members of parliament make political decisions. The Earl Godolphin led the Tory Party. They were a much more conservative party which advocated for making sure that the sovereign has significant political power. The sovereign knows best, and it's not up to a bunch of nobles and Whigs, get it, to decide major political decisions. They advocated for keeping the status quo, if not advocating for giving the sovereign more power. And here are the results. The Whigs managed to gain a majority in the House of Commons, with Lord Somers helping the Whigs gain 291 seats, 280 needed for a majority. In contrast, the Tories only gained 222 seats. For the first time in a while, the Whigs had a majority. In November, the Whig-dominated Parliament managed to pressure Queen Anne enough to accept the Whig junto into the government for the first time in a decade. Ultimately though, the presence of Tory Godolphin in cabinet and the opposition of the Queen meant that they were unable to take full control of the government. Yeah, we're quite a while away from democracy yet.